Hello and welcome to the session Preparing Kids for Social Media Teenhood. My name's Rachel Murrell. I work on the MIP Daily and I'm also a scriptwriter. And I have with me three people who spend a lot of time thinking about how to safeguard kids online and have come here today to talk to us about some of the best practice that they have and some of the research so that we can learn more about how we can move this topic forward. Before I start and introduce you to our first speaker, can I have a quick show of hands? Do we have any broadcasters in the room? Fantastic. Any producers? Great. Distributors? Lovely. Press? Great. And anybody who thinks they should be in Jackie Edwards' session? No? That's great. Okay, so I think we're all pretty familiar with the ideas of fake news, fake friends, cyberbullying, and a myriad of other things and content which we feel is inappropriate for children online. And we're moving slowly, and sometimes by quicker jumps, into a world where we can start to maybe regulate some of this stuff. So I'd like to open with a clip that was kindly supplied by CBBC, which just shows where some kids are with some of this stuff. And the question is, what do you want the internet to be? What do you want to change about the internet? Alice, do you want to tell us where CBBC is at?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here this morning, and apologies, I've got the MIP lurgy, so if you can't hear me very well, that's why. So I'm Alice Webb. I'm Director of BBC Children's, which means I look after everything that the BBC does for the under-16s, so CBBC, CBeebies, and a few other things as well. And this is an excellent topic for us to be talking about this morning, because actually we talk about social media teenhood, but actually look at some of the ages of those children on the videos. They're much younger than that, and I think that's might be an interesting topic to talk about, because the issues that we're going to talk about are for younger children as well as those who are kind of supposed to be on social media. So put that aside for 1 minute. What are we doing at the BBC? Well, the BBC, as everyone knows, we are the public service broadcaster for the UK, and our mission is to inform, to educate, to entertain. And for children, it's also to inspire them. It's to help them make sense of the world around them, and that includes the digital world, because as we know, there is no difference to children about the digital world and the non-digital world. That's like us saying there's a world without oxygen. It is just the world to children. So what we're doing is trying to help children make sense of the world around them in all aspects. And that's about informing them, so giving them knowledge, giving them understanding of what they may be encountering, how should they deal with it. It's by entertaining them, by telling stories, and it's about educating them, it's about giving them tools and resources. Let me tell you a little bit more about what that looks like in practice. So our content, we cover and tackle all sorts of issues that we believe relates to children growing up in a social, digital world and heading for teenhood in that. We have, for example, we have a lovely interactive drama called Dixie. Some of you may know it. It's made for us by Kindle Entertainment. And in that, it's girls at school, and in that it covers the topics from peer pressure online to oversharing to cyberbullying. It's all done in a medium that's telling stories in a way that kids can relate to it. It's entering its 4th season. It's hugely popular, and it generates an enormous amount of comments and interaction from our audience. And we specifically put that online because, not surprisingly, that's where the audience are when they're often thinking about this subject. So that's one example. Another example might be in the way we tackle this in content is something called Life Babble. So Life Babble is a new show that we brought out last year, and it's just 5-minute slots from vloggers and influencers who are talking about their view on all aspects of teenhood and getting into teens. And that's everything from cyberbullying or fake friends through to feeling lonely or grieving, or because this isn't just a technical aspect, this is actually how you emotionally feel about engaging with media. So Life Babble's another example. So content we do. We do plenty of education through tools. I'm going to show you one of them in a minute. One of the big things that we do, as well as through our own platforms, is we work in partnership in the UK outside of the BBC, because I think this is incredibly important. We are one voice of many, we are one influencer of many, and one particular partnership we entered into about 2 years ago is with all the internet service providers in the UK. So it may not be the people that you would traditionally imagine the BBC getting involved with, but how content, media is delivered to children is becoming as important as the media itself, because I'm sure some things we'll talk about soon, what it sits next to, what advertising is wrapped around it, all these things, it's not just about the content itself. So we partner with all the internet service providers, along with Google in the UK, under a banner of Internet Matters, to disseminate our content, to help influence the agenda, to make sure that we are setting policies which are right for children. And then finally, the last thing I want to just talk about is we bring all of that together in something, a new initiative that we are running for children, which is called Own It. So we want kids in the UK to basically be the boss of their online life, to have the tools, the confidence, the knowledge, the vocabulary to own it, to be who they want to be. And we are bringing together all of our content from across the BBC into a single site, online site for them. I think we've got a screen grab of what that looks like, so you can just see the flavour. This is brand new, by the way. We haven't properly launched this, so you're seeing something new here, if we get to see it. Here it is. I hope you can see that. So all sorts of familiar faces to our audience, everything from what happens, Katie, when she does photo experiments, how can you take a better selfie than somebody else? So all of this is put out there in a way that we're hoping to help children navigate their way into social media teenhood. And of course, we use some of our biggest brands because that's what attracts children. And I've just got a clip for you. Please forgive us. This hasn't been seen before. This is a rough cut of some people that you may recognize from a little show called The Next Step, talking about what they were like when they were a little bit younger and social media. So there you go, that's a small snippet, a little rough cut of what we're doing in terms of trying to help kids make the connection between the content that they see and the activity and the feelings and the way that they behave as well in the real world. And that probably sums it up.
Thank you very much. So that last clip that you showed us was about what we might think of as influencers talking directly to your viewers. How do you talk to producers to brief them about the content that they offer you and how to introduce safeguarding?
Yeah, so we do that extensively, actually. We do it extensively with everybody, and we brief all our producers on, as everyone does, our core values, which we are explicit, includes this as well. We actually ask our producers and our talent to be incredible role models, for our audience. We place quite an onus on them to do that. And that involves literally sitting down with every single one of them to talk through how we want them to behave, the values that we're trying to promote. So it is onerous, but we believe it is really important, so we do that.
Okay, we'll come back to the age at which you can talk to kids about some of these things later on. Next, thank you very much. I'd like to introduce Leslie Bailey. Do you want to give your very short title and then tell us about your project?
I know my title does seem to be incredibly long when it's written out like this. So there'll be a quiz afterwards to see whether anyone can remember it. It's Vice President of Channel Marketing and Brand Management, and I work across kids in EMEA, which is Europe, Middle East and Africa. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm delighted to be asked. I feel I'm sandwiched between two public broadcasters, so very, very honoured. Over 3 years ago, we started to develop our anti-bullying initiative, and it was something which we took a great deal of care about because we wanted to make sure we were connecting with our audience in a very authentic way. So we spoke to parents, we spoke to teachers, we spoke to kids, and we did this in the UK, and we did it also in Poland and Italy as well, because one thing we found is that the way that anti-bullying and the way that these topics are, they're slightly different, they're slightly nuanced in these areas, but we wanted to find out what could Cartoon Network do which was going to add value, because we didn't want to be doing something just for the sake of it. And what we found, the key message that came out of the research was this feeling about being friendliness, and very much concentrating on what positive behaviour kids could do, and what the Cartoon Network way was. It fitted so well with our own values, and we felt as Cartoon Network we're experts in speaking to kids. And so we could connect and make content in a way that was showing kids a really positive way of being a buddy and not a bully. We did partner with great organisations across the region to push directly advice to kids, because that isn't our expertise, and it's something that we wanted to make sure that we were getting the right information to them. So initially, there were 3 video spots made, one from the bully, one point of view, one from the kid who was being bullied, and one from the bystander. So the 3 different scenarios that were important to go through for a child, because a child can find themselves in any one of those. And we designed it in 2D animation that looked like a child's drawing. And the reason we did this and not use our own content was we wanted it to stand out in our network and across all of our platforms. So I'm going to show you the second phase, which is a video about being a friend and friendliness. So that worked really well for us, and we continued on developing that campaign. And the next phase was to actually speak to kids and get kids to talk themselves about what it was about being a friend. So that could be what they would do to help a new kid joining a school, what it was like going back to school after the holidays. And the next clip I'm going to show you is about difference. And this is something for Cartoon Network we're really proud about, because our network, we celebrate difference. We've got lots of different characters and different scenarios. And this is kids themselves talking about difference. So it's this positivity about what we're telling kids is a behaviour we think has been really powerful for us. And another way that we've gone and developed that is through the use of influencers. And we've been so lucky actually across the whole region with working from everyone from top pop stars like Mika through to amazing sports stars and even YouTubers, or anyone who felt that they had something to say about the topic, but also really signed up to this feeling about it was important to be a buddy, this feeling of friendliness. So I'm going to show you another video now where we just see some amazing people we've managed to get to work with us on this campaign. And I can say that we're so delighted to be part of this campaign, because it is very, very important to the network. And the last 3 men there you saw are actually, they're called the 3 Adams. They're comedians and friends actually from childhood, which fits beautifully in Turkey. And the bullying and talking about it in Turkey is actually quite hard. And the phrase "zorba olma kanka ol," apologies to anyone Turkish in there for my pronunciation, was a phrase that has now become part of the social currency there, being a buddy, not a bully. And indeed, the campaign, when it first went out with those 3 comedians, it got over 5 million mentions on social and also across digital, so it's incredibly powerful. And the next phase of that in Turkey, they spoke to and used 6 YouTuber influencers, because again, the social part of that's become more and more important. So we're very delighted to be doing this. The next phase for us, we're going to be talking about different families. So those characters will be going into kids' homes, and kids will be talking about what makes their family and celebrating the fact that families in the modern world and the modern, where we live, are compiled of very different units from the normal to parents and to kids. So very exciting. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I've seen some of your other clips which include people talking about having been themselves a bully, which I found really interesting. It's kind of not a perspective we get very much. And this particular person, who's a woman, was saying, I wish somebody had called me out on it when I was a kid. And I found that very illuminating. So how do you measure success, Leslie?
It's a hard one because we are not just trying to hit a number. There's various measurements, so it's what the audience tell us. I mean, we live in this, the world we live in with the plural generation. I'm sure it's been talked about many times before, is they'll let you know, which is marvellous. Also through press and through pickup and commentary across various platforms, through our parents and actually through our distributors. They will tell us about what an impact it has and how it's feeling positive. Also, we've got packs that go into schools, so we get feedback from teachers themselves will say to us how the messaging, it's a very positive messaging, because what you're saying is, I mean, to be honest, I think we could all do with this in all our lives, is be friendly, be kind. And then that is an ethos then to open the door to talking about some very difficult topics has been, created a big impact.
Okay, thanks very much. So our last speaker is Carole Bienaimé Besse from the CSA, which is the French regulator, and she's going to talk a little bit about regulating telly and how that might spin out into the internet.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you, ladies, for what you said, because it's very interesting to see what broadcasters are doing to help the kids to grow up in a post-truth environment. And what we do at the CSA, we regulate the entertainment industry, which is more boring than creating content and editing some channel. But this is very important. We are the French cousin of Ofcom and of the FCC, and we apply a law was created in 1986, but was very updated many times, to try to protect, because one of our first mission is to protect the young viewers and also the young people who appear on the screen. And we noticed with the appearance of the multi-screen world and with the appearance of the social networks that we have to improve the way we regulate the entertainment. So maybe I can introduce you of some few tools that we create. So for example, for the content, we make sure that the kids are not exposed to inappropriate content. So we created watermark on the television, and to guide the audience when they watching the television or television content on another screen, on the telephone or on the tablet, what they could see, under 10, under 16, under 18, to be able to have a kind of guideline of what is safe, what is not safe. So you can see it on the screen. And the other thing is also, so we have a campaign every year on television and on radio for a few days that explain this. And we have a real partnership with the broadcasters who are really, they're really paying attention because they definitely know that the audience really take care of that and is very demanding of tools to protect the children. And I'm sure that you experiment this because the people, the audience, they on Twitter, they're telling you, no, that's not appropriate, or things like that. So all the broadcasters today, they realize that it is very important to be a good partner with the audience. So we have this this campaign every year, and we have maybe you will be surprised, but for us, screens, television are not appropriate for little kids under 3 years old. So we have a classification for television program. As you can see, 10 years old, we recommend, under 10 years old, we recommend to watch only kids program, and after it's very, it's graduate, and it explains you how to deal with the program. But for kids under 3 years old, we are very, we noticed that under the age of 3, some experts say under the age of 4, but we said 3, they must learn to experiment the world, the real world, and to be more efficient, because the real thing is it starts from the early age, to be able to control and to understand what you see, and to be able to say, okay, that's a fake news, that's not good, or that's not appropriate. You must need to have an education since you were a little kid. But before that, you need to experiment the real world, so you're able to make a real difference. So we have another campaign with focus for the kids under 3, to explain the parents that they should make the best efforts to not give a telephone or a tablet or television to kids under 3. I know it appears maybe radical, but this is very. The experts of health are really agree with that. So. And to be more efficient, this is the next step of the presentation. I will show you the little campaign just after that, so you will be able to understand what is the message. But we're really working on education, on giving tools to the parents, because the parents, you cannot only give tools to the kids, you need to give also tools to parents, so because it's a family matter. And we try definitely to make it a family discussion, and because otherwise it's not only for the parents, not only for the kids. That's why we try to make them to communicate all together. And to be honest, today the law we apply as regulator, we think it has come to is maybe limited because it was created before all the screen we had, and on television I think everything is under control, but there is the rest, and it is a kind of wild west. So we need to definitely enlarge the power of regulators, not only CSA, to help to regulate also social media, also internet content. Otherwise, it won't be efficient. Our campaigns, they are efficient, but if you don't give more powers to the regulators to be able to apply the law on the internet, it won't be efficient anymore. So we definitely working hard on this because we think it's that's the first one of the first step of the new well-being for the children. We really insist in this message to say that the young audience must be active and not passive. I mean, because being passive in front of a screen, you don't interact with the real world. And since your childhood, you have to learn to be active with the technology, active with the image you see on the screen, so you can understand and control what you see and be able to make your mind when you see a fake news or wrong information or an inappropriate content.
Carole, thanks very much. So I'm not sure how the audience is going to feel about the concept of banning screens for children up to the age of 3. I'm sure that will come up for discussion. But I wanted to ask you, is there a regulatory tool that you would like to have? Would you like to be able to actually ban them, rather than just telling parents to be careful? Would you like the power to ban it?
Definitely, we would like to be more efficient with the internet providers to work in a more efficient communication and partnership, to be able to cancel some website or some content. For example, even when we didn't talk about piracy, but when you have a young viewers who going to stream a content or other, they are often exposed to inappropriate content. So we should be able, we know the internet providers, they have the data, they have all the information of what you do, and also what it exists, what are the platform with inappropriate content. And I think we definitely could be more efficient if we could create a strong partnership with them.
Thanks very much. So Alice, let me ask you, what do you think of the idea of banning kids up to the age of 3 from using screens?
So on the one hand, I think it's admirable, but on the other, I think it's probably unrealistic. I think that it goes back to what I said right at the beginning, that digital is everywhere. It's in everything. And I think in a time when watching television was an appointment to view and you sat down, I think then maybe you could take this approach. But I think that those times are long gone. And I think the thing that we try and concentrate on is, I think it's impossible for people to think that we can control what goes online. Internet service providers, platforms, yes, absolutely, they have a role to play, but this is like a tide that you can never quite get ahead of, because there's a new app, there's a new website, there's a new something else. Actually, what we focus on much more, as well as making sure that children can distinguish the things that they should or shouldn't be watching, but it's actually, how do they cope? How do they cope when they see things that they don't want? How do they develop critical thinking, so that they know whether it's real or not, and that because digital is everywhere. There's a screen. There's a screen in the supermarket. It's just part of what we do. So it's about giving them the tools to cope with what they're seeing. But how can you give a 2-year-old tools? So absolutely. So for a 2-year-old, I think that we have games and apps which are about education. They are absolutely about helping children connect with what and develop cognitive thinking skills, all of the types of developmental skills that a 2-year-old needs. But that involves playing on screen and in the real world. This isn't an either-or. This is just part of the mixed diet that our world is in. So we do that. We encourage people to do it in moderation, all the things I think people would expect us as a public service broadcaster to be doing. You want to come in?
Yeah, sure. Of course, we live in 2017, and we definitely understand that this is a digital world. But you need to understand the technology, and you need to understand that when you have a phone or a tablet, the effect it produces on the kids, on the baby, because we're talking about babies. And the scientists today all around the world are starting to, there are studies, case studies also, that explaining that you can create virtual autism if some kids are overexposed on screens. So what we try is to protect and to educate the people about what is technology and what can be the effect. For example, I give you an example with the phone. Apple, they create the night shift because you've got the blue light, and it creates excitation when you go to bed, or because they go to bed with the tablet and so on. So they changed it because it created things on the brain, because it creates excitation. So, I mean, when you're aware of that, you know that you won't watch your phone before you go into bed. This is what we're trying to do. Of course, we know that we don't go to people's house to say, oh no, don't do that. We're just doing campaign, and after you do what you want.
Carole, we agree on many things because, of course, and moderation is absolutely the key. So you will find many similar messages in our world. But I think it is the sense that you can ban. You can prohibit these things. I think that is, I think that's a harder place to go.
Can I ask Leslie here? In addition to the very cool Be a Buddy Not a Bully project that you're doing, are there other things that you can model for children? Like, for example, when they go to bed at night, put their phone in the kitchen to charge rather than keeping it in the bedroom, or helping parents figure out ways to talk to a 14-year-old boy about the porn that he's watching. Could you tackle any of those things? That's quite outside your age group.
I was going to say that's quite a leap. Our audience is kids, it isn't teens, so we go up to 12. Our Spanish channel, we've got a free-to-air channel called Boing. They've actually done a very nice series of campaigns about top tips for kids to help their parents with. So, which includes, ranging from tidying your room through to, bedtime and those sorts of things. And it's something as well on our younger channel, which starts at 4. Boomerang, we do have quietening down towards bedtime. One of the positive things we do for Cartoon Network is we really celebrate and encourage imagination. So we've got a regional program called Imagination Studios where we say to kids, come and create, come and actually make things, come and, whether it's a drawing, whether it's a film, all sorts of different activities. And we actually give them tutorials, the tools, downloads to do that. And that's something we found, we focus on positive, what we think you should positively do, and we feel that fits our values best, rather than, I can understand from a state broadcaster point of view, you've got a slightly different remit, but we're about encouraging behavioural positivity. So Imagination Studios has worked really well for us, and I'd encourage everybody to go to the website and have a go.
Thank you. Amazingly, we're approaching the end of the session, but I wanted to ask the speakers about initiatives going forward. And I know Alice is working hard on a media summit. Could you just say something about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that we all agree, and you see from the debate on the stage here, that this is an incredibly important area that we all need to spend more time thinking about, because no longer are we in a world where you can just make content if you're a producer. You need to worry about where that's going to go and how it's going to live in the world out there. If you're a platform provider, if you're an internet service provider, if you're one of the big platform providers, a Google, an Amazon, a Facebook, you've got some responsibility, and of course policymakers and regulators. So it's kind of that triumvirate, I think, are the people who need to come together and talk about this more, about how we shape the right environment for children going forward. Because what we have now we know isn't right, and we're all trying to come at it from different angles. So we are holding, the BBC is hosting something called the Children's Global Media Summit. You saw it briefly at the end of that opening film. And that's in Manchester in the UK at the beginning of December. And I would encourage all of you to come and join us. It's a 3-day summit. We are bringing together those three parties, content makers, platform providers, and policymakers from around the world to really talk about this topic. And also some of the things that are different. What's the future of play look like for children in a digital world? What's the future of storytelling? So all these things, which I hope will then allow us to be better informed and to process some of the research that's coming out in the world and work out collectively what we think the right way forward is. So December in the Manchester, we have leaflets. When you leave, please pick up a leaflet and come and join us.
So Leslie and Carole, do you have something coming up that you'd like to just tell us is happening, or should we go to a question from the audience who are all gagging for it?
Well, I was going to say that we look across every single bit of content we make, whether it's in an app or a game, on a website, in a social experience, and make sure it's suitable for the audience we have, and that it's going to connect with the fans of our content. So we've got so many exciting things coming up, whether it's Ben 10 or Powerpuff Girls, through to new shows like OKKO coming out, which is a digital first. So exciting times. Obviously, I encourage all of you to watch Cartoon Network.
You're not allowed to say that. Carole, just briefly, because we're coming to the end.
Yeah, of course, and I agree with what Alice said. We have to work more together, all together. So we'll be pleased to join your conference, and we will maybe work on other campaign and try to educate, media education. Work with schools also to help the teachers to bring the technology and the media at school, and also I think encouraging the young people to do coding, to code, because to be in control of technology, I think it helps to prevent from inappropriate content.
Thanks very much. I think we can we squeeze in one question? Just one. Anybody? Quick show of hands? Yes, please, in the front row.
Thank you. This is really interesting. Thank you, all of you. That idea about the big platform providers in the social world, the Facebooks, the Instagrams, the Musical.ly, which loads of 9-year-olds are on, their rule seems to be you shouldn't be on there if you're under 13. And when you ask them about child safety, that seems to be their answer, well, they shouldn't be on here. Is that a barrier that for social media, you're not supposed to be on there if you're under 13? And does that stop them kind of coming together and taking that responsibility for, well, there are lots of kids doing it? How can we get around that?
Is that becoming an excuse for the big social media platforms to stay out of this debate? Alice, are you getting them along to the summit?
Yes, they're all coming along to the summit, absolutely. So my experience, and I've worked a lot with them, is that they want to do things that give kids support and help and in this area, but they absolutely stand firm on the age. You know, nobody under 13 is on our platform. The stats would suggest that's a very different position, and I think that the world is becoming now that they are finding it increasingly hard to stand behind that line. They currently still stand behind that line, and I think that the numbers, you know, in the UK, 75% of 10-year-olds and above are on social media. So it's incredibly hard. But for now, they're standing behind that line, and you need to talk to them about how they feel about that.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Well, thank you to the three speakers, and thank you all for coming, and see you at the next session.